let's continue. Right. Whether this okay. Guys, ladies and gentlemen, today is another good day the Lord have made, right? We thank God for everything. Because if God is to look into our sins, we are not deserved. We are undeserved, right? By His grace, by His mercy, we are here today. We must give thanks and glory to His name, right? Very important. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I want to begin with this. Today, the scope. By now, you know what the scope is, what needs to be done in the project, right? To unpack it for you to understand comprehensively. So, this is what it entails. The quality, obviously, the project needs to state the quality standard that is required of the project. You know what I mean, right? Then the legal constraints, if there are some legal constraints that you need to confine yourself with, right? Obey the laws and all those kind of stuff. Scope needs to detail it out. Then the technology requirement, the resources that are needed, of course, the skills, knowledge, and experience that are required to do the project. It needs to be there. Then the supplies and the profit, if there's profit, for example, if the project is a kind of a business oriented, whereby one needs to make profit, it has to be included in the scope, right? Okay. Now the exclusions. Remember, I told you exclusions. It might come out in the exam. This is what we mean by exclusions. Any project cannot be, okay, we said any project cannot be everything to everyone. I think I've spoken about this already. I can remember now, right? So there are certain things that needs to be excluded from the project. So those things needs to be incorporated. Inclusion, list of everything to be included in the project, right? In the exam, if they ask you something about inclusion and exclusion, would no man, you got this note. Got the note, man, right? Never mind. Okay. Then the deliverables, you know what deliverables are? The outcomes of a project, right? The deliverables, perhaps the product of the project, right? So an item that is produced as a result of the project activities is what we refer to as deliverables. Because at the end of the day, there must be something to showcase, right? Evidence of the project. So what you need to showcase as an evidence of the project is the deliverables. You understand what I mean? Deliverables are mostly derived from the project objectives, right? You set out to do a project based on certain objectives, right? There are things that you want to achieve. So at the end of the project, so whatever you achieve as a result of the project, which are in line with the objectives, is what we refer to as deliverables. Do you understand? Right. Deliverables for the trade. This one is just an example, right? This is a hypothetical example, if you will, or practical example, as you may like to call it. Deliverables for the training center project, for example, could be one office for the administration, completed by 10th of May, perhaps. Then two lecture rooms completed by 15th of May, one kitchen completed by 20th May, one ablution. You know what is ablution? Ablution is like a toilet, right? Muslims, they call it ablution. I don't know, maybe they borrowed that language from the Muslim. Ablution is like toilet. You know, Muslims always have ablution room. They go, they wash. You know, those people, they don't use toilet paper, right? They when they go to the toilet, they always have a kettle. Then they wash their stuff and those kind of stuff, right? So ablution is more or less like toilet, mess room, ladies room. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, that is an ablution. Right. Then document objectives. What is it? Yeah. You see, if you don't pronounce this thing very well, then you get lost. Document objectives. Objectives of the project needs to be documented. True of us. Okay. So the project manager document the identified project objectives, right? What needs to be achieved by doing the project, perhaps. Then the assumptions, You know what are assumptions? I told you yesterday. Then the needs, the expectations of the stakeholders, perhaps, the constraints. You know what I mean by constraints? Things that could stand on the way of the project not being realized, like barriers, like hiccups, pitfalls, challenges. Those ones are what we call constraints. A good example of constraint is time. Time is a big constraint, right? Scope of a project is a constraint. Then budget is a constraint because resources are always limited. If resources are unlimited, this world will not make sense again. If everybody should have everything that we need, will the world make sense again? Talk to me, right? If everybody should be equal, right? Everyone will become millionaires. Will life make sense again? Yeah, cannot. Right. Then you need to, the exclusions as well, the inclusion, the deliverables. These are when you are documenting your project. So documentation done in form of a report. The report distributed to the stakeholders. Okay, what we are talking about is this, right? You see, stakeholders are very important as far as the success of a project is concerned. So anything pertaining to the project needs to be put down. With those days, we used to say in black and white, right? But these days now you've got digital system of documenting things. I don't know whether we still have to use black and white. Of course, we can still say black and white because the document, the background of the paper could be white. Then what you type in could be in black color, unless you decide to use red. But you cannot present an official paper being in red color. Right? Okay, we can still use that black and white. It's still valid, right? So everything needs to be black and white in form of a report to present to the stakeholders. That is what we are trying to stress about here. Perhaps sometimes you need to discuss it with the stakeholders because not all stakeholders are at the same level of comprehension or having the same level of intelligence. Some you need to lead them by their hands, right? You need to explain to them. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Then how would that report looks like? That report needs to be professional. Do you understand what I mean? Even if the stakeholder is an illiterate, you know what I mean by illiterate? Somebody that is not educated. Perhaps the stakeholder doesn't know how to read and write. But you don't say because the stakeholder doesn't know how to read and write, your report will not be professional, right? Because the way you prepare your report will reflect on you in terms of who you are. Do you understand? You must always try to do this in a professional way. So the layout of the report, of the general report, we of course have a title page, right? Title and the date of the report done in capital letter. Is it professional? Right. In a capital letter. Capital letter is uppercase. You've done it in LO, right? When they say uppercase means capital letter. In French, we call it majuscule. Then lowercase, we call it minuscule. I'm teaching you French now. Right. So that is how we call it. Then quote also the compiler of the report, the guy that is compiling the report, the name of the project manager, Dr. D or whatever, right? Or you can put, what is your name again? Tandy, right? Something of that nature. Then it must have an executive summary. What is an executive summary? It's an overview. You know, an executive summary more or less look like an abstract or preface. You know what is a preface? In textbooks, we call it preface. We got preface. You know what I'm talking about? Preface. In textbook, you just read it, you open it. For example, the table of content. After that, you see the preface. You just read it. It tells you what the book is all about. That is the preface of a textbook. Yeah, sometimes it's inside, like a novel is always outside, right? Back cover. Then you just read it. You know what it's all about. It's like an abstract in the academic journal. We call it abstract. So abstract tells you what the document is all about. So in this case, we call it executive summary, just like you have in a business plan. Business plan, executive summary, it provides the overview, right, of what the business plan is all about. Are you understanding what I'm saying? So to unpack it more, or to talk more, or to add more, if you will, executive summary state the key issues covered in the report, right? As well as the purpose of the report, the findings and recommendation, written after finalizing the report, written on one page long. Sometimes it could be one page, sometimes it could be less than one page, right? It depends on how or the voluminous nature of the report. You know what I mean by volume? Voluminous. You know volume. Yeah. So from volume, you have voluminous. When we say voluminous, means a lot, right? Okay. Then we need to the layout continue. You need to have an introduction, right? What is you're gonna include in the introduction? Overall idea of the report, the purpose of the report, the objective of the report, an outline of the report. You know what is an outline? What is contained in the report? You just list it out or write it out. You can list it or you can just put comma, but it must be written out, not in detail, the outline. You know what is an outline? Hello, you know what is an outline? Yeah, this. Yeah. No, I'm asking you, you know what is an outline? For example, if somebody asks you, let's say I want to present a training to you now. Somebody say, can you please send me the outline? Right? What I'm going to do, I will just list it out, right? Without talking in detail of what I'm going to do. That is an outline. It's like a guideline, not necessarily, not necessarily a summary, right? Because outline is always listed. You see, summary you don't list it, right? Summary is always in paragraph, right? Outline you can list it. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. So I'll give you the outline. For example, let's say I'm going to organize a training for you, a workshop. Somebody say, give me an outline of what you're gonna do in the workshop, right? Then I can, it's like a schedule, right? In the morning, this is what I'm gonna deliver. In the afternoon, they will do this, something of that nature. Right. Okay. Very good. But in a report, it's more or less the same. Then the problem statement. I don't want to hug you with this. This thing I'm teaching you now. This is what people that are doing advanced degree in the university, this is what they learn. Problem statement, all these things. If you hear somebody say he's doing master's, PhD, honors dissertation, this is how they structure it. Right. What is a problem statement? The problem or issue that the report focuses on. That is the problem statement. Postgraduate students, they struggle with this to define problem statement in their research. It's a very something that is hectic for them. I've been examining so many dissertations. Here they get stuck to describe really the problem statement of their research, right? But this, for you, we are just introducing you to the concept, right? So what you need to know here is that the problem statement is still the problem or issue that the report focuses on. Does it make sense to you? Then on one or two paragraph, not so long, right? One or two paragraph explaining why it is so important to focus on the issue. Right. Then you construct a problem statement in one sentence. Right. For example, the problem of this report is that student of West Coast College, right? Then, for example, if it is accommodation problem, are facing issues of accommodation. That is a problem statement. You understand what I mean? So you formulate it in such an articulated and comprehensible manner. Does it make sense to you? Then the layout of the general report will still continue the background. This is a research, how to present a research report. I don't know why they included it in your curriculum because this thing is advanced for you, right? Okay. Then the background to the problem must be there, whereby you explain how the idea of the project comes about, perhaps. You explain how the problem arose, if investigating any problem, explain what happened prior to the project, or problem that brought about need, explain the process that took place prior to that, to prior to necessitated. Okay, this area you need to motivate. When you state the problem, you need to motivate why you think it must be focused on or why you focus on it. That is the bottom line here. That is the take home. Right. Then the objectives. Provide details of the objectives each under its heading. Objectives is what you stand to achieve. Right. Then the conclusion. For most of you that are going to do postgraduate degrees, there you're gonna come across this. That time you're gonna remember me, how I was explaining this thing to you, right? Yeah. So then you have the conclusions, of course, which is based on the project evaluation investigation. Then the appendices, right? Appendices is where you put the supporting document, right? Yes. Professional. Oh, girl, that is a very lovely question. I'm happy that you can think broad this way. And I love that. Professional degrees based on your career profession, right? Academic, okay, for example, now, if you want to, there's a professional degree in nursing, there's a professional degree in psychology, it's going to be restricted to your area, right? But academic is more about theory, it's broad, theoretical, not aligned, not to a specific profession. Yeah. Because I remember there was one lady that I assisted. She was studying in the University of, what is the name of this university now? In UK. She was doing a PhD in professional PhD, right? That was when I came to understand that there is a big difference between the academic professional degree and the academic in terms of PhD at that level, right? So that one is tied to your profession, right? So the other one is, for example, the academic is theoretical, more theoretical than the professional. Professional is more technical. Does it make sense to you? It's a good question. I love that. Yeah. One of these days, I'm looking forward to see you acquiring some of those degrees, right? Like it. So appendix, that is where you put the supporting document, right? It's good to think broad because what she asks now is something that herself is aspiring to be there. And one of these days, you're going to be there, right? You put the supporting document, right? What could be the supporting document? Evidence, right? That is what you put there. Okay. So that is that. Let me see. Okay. Now, remember what we are doing now. I'm explaining concepts to you, right? Different concepts. That is why it seems not to be logical. Then, work package. Work package is a piece of work that can be estimated realistically and can be completed quickly. You know what is a work package? A work package is a collection of tasks, right? That can be done within a specific period of time. Of course, in terms of estimation, that can be completed quickly, right? When you take your project, you divide it into different tasks, right? Perhaps you have main task and then subtasks, right? So those subtasks, you can group them together. Small tasks that can be done within a specific period of time is what we refer to as a work package. It's like something in a container, task, right? Small tasks that can be done within a short period of time in a container, right? That is the package. Remember, when somebody say package, it means that there are things, little stuff inside that are put together. Does it make sense to you? A package is not one unit. There are things inside there, a package. For example, if they say family package, when you go to Pick and Pay or ShopRite, perhaps, they say family package. They put a lot of stuff together, right? They say this one is for family package. Does it make sense to you? Right. Okay. So a work package is a deliverable at the lowest level of the work breakdown structure. So you must know that. Then develop, you know what is WBS this time around? Okay. So things that you need to consider when developing WBS, right? The time, the cost, the quality, and the quantity, which is very important. Ways to develop WBS. You first of all list each task that needs to be done in the project, which is broken down into subtasks, right? And all relevant activities. Then you identify the process that in terms of how it's to be done, the resources needed, the time frame. This one should be, I don't know why they say WBS. This one is more relevant when you are preparing a Gantt chart, a schedule, right? You know what is a Gantt chart, right? Because WBS, the way it is, you identify the task that needs to be done, right? Start from the main task, then from the main task to subtask. Then you arrange it in form of a hierarchical order, right? So when you are doing a Gantt chart, then you put all these things into consideration, right? Yeah, I think they made a mistake here. It shouldn't be WBS. It should be Gantt chart because look at it. Identify dependency between tasks. There is no dependency in the WBS. It's when you are doing the Gantt chart, you got dependency. Remember dependency where I said finish to finish, finish to start, right? Where sometimes you can have something like overlaps. You know what I mean by overlaps? Okay. So the project scope, we've already talked about the project scope. To add more, right? We said the project scope statement, it got the name of the project, right? The description of the project, how it will be implemented, of course, special features or issue that needs to be considered, main activities to be undertaken, aspects that are included in the project, and then this one is inclusion and exclusion, must be part of a project scope. Then project success factors. What do we mean by project success factors? These are it's a kind of indicators that you yourself, you incorporate in the project that you are going to use to know whether the project is succeeding or not, or whether you are making success in achieving the project objectives or not. Those are what we call project success factors. Right? How will you know that the project is successful? There should be things that you need to be able to achieve before you can say the project is successful. For example, let me come back to your NCV project, right? You see, remember we did something like milestones. Milestone, you remember? Milestones can be used as a project success factor. By the time you achieve such a milestone, then you know that you are making a headway. You are making a progress towards achieving your project objectives. Then the cost of the project must be included as well. Where? In the scope, right? The budget. The timeline must be included as well. Timeline. Why do you need to include the timeline in the scope? Yeah. So it details out when the project has started and when the project